Thank you for the invitation and congratulations for this wonderful day that you organized here. And it makes me, for two reasons, very proud to be here as well, because from the host country, Poland, I think, we can, as my colleague said, when it comes to innovation rankings, we're at the top since many years. But honestly, when it comes to digitalization rankings, we're middle class. So, and there is also an area, I think, where we can learn a lot from Poland. Also, from Ukraine and other countries that are, due to very unfortunate circumstances, are very much ahead of us in that field. But I think also we have a lot to offer. Then the other reason is to be at Google. And maybe you don't know, but there's a lot of Switzerland in Google. The search engine that you're using almost daily probably as a chief Swiss engineer architect, one of the first employees of Google, Urs Hölzle, who, by the way, also introduced, I think, the tradition that you can bring your dog to the office, which I think for quality of work can be quite crucial. And also, when it comes to Google Maps, this has been invented in Zurich. And when we heard that Patrick was leaving to Warsaw, we were, of course, very concerned because we were afraid that he's going to do the same thing as he does in Zurich now in Poland, and look where he is. So, but, it doesn't surprise me because in Zurich, they went into a former beer factory, and now here they went into a vodka distillery. So, what are we still going to see? So, thank you very much. And, I'll tell you a few words about the Swiss approach to digital in the foreign policy, because we were convinced in 2019, our minister convened a group of people to think, well, how would the world look like in 2028? That was before a pandemic, before a terrible war waging in Europe. And it was called the Switzerland's vision of the world in 2028. And there were two basic recommendations coming out of it. One is that we really need to build up a digital tech diplomacy, because that is a new world, like a new continent that is shaping our world, that is influencing our interests. It has impacts on our values and human and rights. And like we do that with other countries, with the United States or the EU or Singapore, we need to have relationship with the main actors in this digital world, like the tech companies, but also international organizations based in Geneva, for instance, to really be able to shape also this world in the way we would like to see this. And this then ended up in one of the priorities of the foreign policy strategy and in a proper digital foreign policy strategy, which now actually comes to the end of the first term, and we're working on the next edition for the next 4 years. And basically, I won't go into details, but the main characteristics of that digital world is that we have an immense growth of information, data, and compute power like never seen before. And this is changing the fabric, the social fabric. It's changing the policies. It's changing the way we work, the way we live, the way we eat, the way we do healthcare. So this is and it has downsides and upsides. We have to work on ethical challenges. We have to work better on cybersecurity because, frankly speaking, we cannot build this world with the level of cybersecurity that we have at the moment. We have to get better if it becomes like the most important infrastructure that we have. But on the same time, we saw there are so many opportunities, there are so many possibilities to improve SDGs, to improve freedom of expression, to have really new possibilities to tackle the world's biggest challenges. And so we ended up having these 4 action fields from cybersecurity, because we think the digital age, again, it's not possible if we can't make it safe. We need to have new rules, new formats of institutions that are prepared to work for this. And that's, by the way, my colleague, Ambassador Fillier, also already told about it. In that report of Switzerland in 2028, there was also the conviction that we need to be more anticipatory. We need to have an anticipatory diplomacy. So we need to know what's going on in the labs, in the research institutions, and so that we can see, well, what is coming up in the next 5, 10, 25 years even. So the Geneva Science Diplomacy Anticipator, he publishes every year the Science Breakthrough Radar at the summit in Geneva last 2 weeks ago, where we can really scan what's coming. And the idea is that, when with the digital age, we sort of, politicians, the administrations, we got a little bit caught by surprise. AI, again, I think we managed a little bit better. But, what are we doing when quantum is here? We know quantum will be here. It's already here, but in 5, 10 years, and researchers, when you asked them 20 years ago where quantum would be today, they were quite accurate, actually, where we're going to be. So, and also on AI, there's talk about, there's new advanced AI, what's coming when it comes into robotics, into drones. It's going to be a different AI than the AI that we have today. And this is really something also that we have to bring into discussions when we then talk about how to govern a world with a quantum technology, for instance. Then I'll come, this is my favorite field, I'd say the prosperity and sustainable development. How can we make this use of it in order to better achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, the Agenda 2030, where we also know we're not on track. And I think if we use AI properly, it can make a huge boost. I'll come with a specific example later on. And then digital self-determination. I think that's also what State Secretary said. We want to have this technology compatible with our values, with our human rights approach, and we want to have data that respects data privacy of the people, but still can make a contribution for a better world, be it in health or environment. Now, this is an interesting Swiss thing. It's in French. And, in the 19th century, when you took a train, that was quite a dangerous thing to do. You could get robbed, the bridges were collapsing, trains were derailing. So I think we wouldn't take trains anymore if the security of taking a train would be still at the level of the 19th century. So the train managers back then sat together in Bern and thought, we have, for instance, one very specific problem. What do I do if one of my train wagons is in France and the France colleague needs to close that wagon? Or a German wagon is in Switzerland. So then they sat around the table and said, well, let's design a key. So they made this key, which is actually still in use in European countries. And with this key, they were able to close to the wagons. And then they said, well, now we have sorted out one problem with a specific tool, but there may be others. So they founded an organization which is still placed in Bern. It's OTIF, it's the European Association of Railway Association. And they came with other regulation. I think that's also what we were mentioning a little bit. They were not just regulating everything they needed beforehand, but they were looking very specifically at problems which came up, and then they found a solution and found a way to make this work. So I think it's maybe today you would call it a sandbox approach to say, okay, you isolate a problem and you look for a solution. I think that's also something we'll have to observe when we talk about AI regulation. Let's try and test and then see what are the problems, and then we can start regulating, because then we also know what we really need to regulate. Bern is not so much anymore the center of the digital governance of the world. We still have the Postal Union in Bern, but most of the international organizations that are now important stakeholders in the digital governance are based in Geneva. And nobody less than Brad Smith, president of Microsoft, is very convinced that actually we need to invest more in places like the International in Geneva to find solutions to burning problems in that age. And just a quick survey of organizations that are based in Geneva. I would just highlight maybe one or two. The Geneva Dialogue on Responsible Behavior in Cyberspace. It's an initiative that we started in our ministry because we were convinced that the cyberspace can only be as safe as the companies that are in that space. So this is a dialogue among the private sector, but with diplomats and international experts, how we can make the private sector safer in the cyberspace. And what can the private sector also contribute? Roche is also part of this, because when you talk about diagnostics or new ways of treating, which can be linked to the Internet of Things, you're better sure that these devices are safe, because if you get the wrong dose, you don't feel happy afterwards. Of course, we have the big organizations like ITU, but also technical organizations like ISO, who make already now standards in AI, so that AI is really interoperable. And I was inspired by, we have a Swiss cheese passport where you can check out different cheeses of Switzerland. So now we have the Geneva Digital Passport, where you can see all the main technologies and all the organizations that are in Geneva working on these issues. It's from the Geneva Internet Platform. It's accessible also online, of course, with QR codes that always bring you to the latest information in these subjects. Now, I'd like to come to a very specific use case that we launched together with the Swiss supercomputer and ETH AI centers. Because when the whole AI hype came up, Switzerland was very active in the negotiations of the convention in the Council of Europe, which we led to a successful end this year. So we thought, well, regulation so far, I think it's not the problem. We don't want to add something there. But we thought one of the really missing ends is there's not enough trust in AI. And if you look at the real sort of engine of AI, it's the compute. If you don't have compute, you can't do AI. If you don't have data, you can't do AI. So we started at Bletchley Park an initiative called the Swiss Call for Trust and Transparency in AI, which is on the one hand a new format that we designed together with the professors of ETH and tech companies, so that you have a red teaming. I didn't know what red teaming was before. I hope you all know. Otherwise, there's certainly somebody who knows that here in the room. But it's more or less, you try internally to see in your company if this device is safe. But that is a process which is still made sort of within each company. And they don't share it. They tell you, well, it's safe. We tested it. It's all okay. But you cannot check it. So we said we should do that in a more open process, that we have the best people who can do this red teaming, and that we bring the expertise of companies, and then we learn from each other. So that is that red teaming. But then the even more exciting thing was we came up with the idea of an international computation and AI network. And the idea of this is that we can bring the compute, the data, but also the capabilities together and work on specific use cases and goals. And this is a collaboration between the Swiss Supercomputer Center and the European consortium of LUMI in Finland. And it's actually quite a nice combination because, as we've heard, our supercomputer is called ALPS. and the Finnish computer is called Lumi. I always thought this means something with light, because they probably need some more light in the winter, but actually it means snow. So snow and Alps, it's really a fantastic tandem. And so the idea is that we would work on specific use cases in the areas of SDGs, and also that we would end up with a little bit of a structure like the CERN, but of course totally different, because you cannot have one big supercomputer in one place in the world. But if you have a federation and a network of the best supercomputers that can work together, this is really probably the way to go forward. And also, we said we also want to have an outreach to, for instance, the Global South. So we have a collaboration with Data Science Africa, who have really a network of data scientists in Africa, which is really impressive. But again, they don't have the data, and they don't have the supercompute. So now we can bring all these together, the ELIS network, where we also have a representative here from Poland, the Finnish supercompute, and then, as we said, the EPFL ETH Zurich. And the goal is really to come up with specific use cases. So we're working at the moment on 3 use cases. One is on sort of precision agriculture and better weather forecasts, because you have, in Africa, you have hardly any weather stations. And when you're a farmer, weather is really quite important for you. But there's a startup from Finland, by the way, who can measure in mobile telephone networks with the signal of if there's a delay in the signal coming from the satellite, that tells them how much humidity is in the air, and when you can measure the humidity, you can make good weather forecasts. So we bring also startups into that equation, and then there's also one on plant diseases, because you can do with satellite imaging these days, you can detect a plant disease earlier than with a human eye. And if you have an AI model that can detect these plant diseases in satellite imagery, that can also be a game changer for agriculture. And then we have, of course, as Switzerland is also very engaged in international humanitarian law, we're working on an LLM with the International Committee of the Red Cross, how the humanitarian people in the field can use AI to improve their impact. So that's a little bit the presentation I wanted to make to you. And I think just to close from my side, I think Switzerland and Poland, we have really a unique opportunity, because I think what our countries both managed to do is that we have the good science, the best science, but we're also good engineers. And I just recently was at the AI Plus summit in Zurich, where they were building the latest robots. And you know, to build a robot, honestly, in Silicon Valley, they don't have the manufacturing skills anymore. They can't build a robot. And that's something what our country still can do. And I think that for us is a real chance. And also the investments that we have to make, and that we will continue to make in research and education, because all this that we can really use now is because we have invested for years and years huge sums of public money into universities, education on all levels. And I think that's also the key for future success and innovation. Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward for hearing your views today. Thank you.